people have questions here, feel free to say, like, you guys can pause and ask for questions too.
Yeah, I mean, some of it, like, do we think that they're more interested in the backstory?
Yes,
like how they got there, or like now, like.
I'm third. Okay, yes. Can we just stand here and wait? Yeah, maybe we'll stand here and then Tony.
Ooh, it is bright up here, guys. I hear you, Mom. I'm pushing it down.
Yeah, just come stand up here with me.
She said, push your skirt down. Closer to you. This is
All right. Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to everybody who is here in person, to those who are live streaming, welcome, and to those who will be watching this at a later time, welcome to you as well. We are so grateful to be able to gather for our third annual Mental Health Connections Week here at the First Presbyterian Church of Atlanta. This collaboration between First Pres, the Samaritan Counseling Center of Atlanta, and the Will for Hope Foundation has continued to grow and deepen through the years. Each of these organizations is committed to providing space and resources and connection to be able to invest in our mental health along with our spiritual health. We create spaces where we can belong and be a part of community that addresses mental illness, how we care and show concern just as along with any other illness. This year, we wanted to create intentional space for our middle school and high school students at First Pres to be a part of this dialogue. And so we are so glad that this whole wing is represented by our awesome First Pres youth. We're so glad that you are here tonight as well. The Will for Hope Foundation, for the third year in a row, has financially made possible our keynote speaker program. So thank you, Kate, on behalf of the Will for Hope Foundation. You can find more information about First Pres, about the Samaritan Counseling Center, and about the Will for Hope Foundation right at the back. Rob, will you wave? Right where Rob is, behind him are tables. And please, if you want to know more about the church, the Counseling Center, or the Will for Hope Foundation, you will see stuff there. You will also see see on the Will for Hope Foundation cards, there's a QR code that you can learn, how to support them financially, but also other things that they have going on in ways that you can participate in the work and mission of the Will for Hope Foundation. Also on the back table, finally, are 4 sheets of paper, and not for the people who go to school Monday through Friday, but for the people that don't. One of the goals that Kate and I have had as we've pulled together these Mental Health Connections weeks is wanting to also give people a chance to talk further and connect with one another about what we hear and how it resonates with us throughout the week. So I'm going to just have the people stand up when I tell you, and there are sign-ups on the back table if you can join us this week. So tomorrow morning, this is also for if you're live streaming, you can email me and sign up that way too, until they're full. But from Monday morning at 10 a.m., Afroz is our therapist who's here. She's right there waving at everybody. Afroz and I are going to lead the small group at 10 a.m. tomorrow. On Tuesday at 1 p.m., Anne Marie is our therapist from Samaritan, and she is also waving to you all in the back. And she is going to lead with Tony at 1 p.m. on Tuesday. You'll see this written down. On Wednesday, our clinical director and therapist at Samaritan, Gretchen Reese, is also waving right back there. And she is going to lead with Calicia Wright, who is on our pastoral staff, who will be there on Wednesday at 1. And then on Thursday at 11 a.m., Trisha Pasuth, who is one of our therapists right back there, will be leading with Barry, who is right over there, one of our pastors. So feel free to sign up if your schedule allows for any of those days. We would love to be able to connect further as well. And Tony, thank you for opening us in a word of prayer.
Thanks. Before I pray, Kate, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Hudson, thank you for your continued support and your vision for the Will for Hope Foundation and the difference that it's making in the Southeast and beyond. Friends, let us pray. Lord, we give you thanks for communities that remind us that we're not alone, that you are with us and for us, and that we are with and for one another. For that, we say thank you. We pray that our reflections tonight, what we hear, what we process, would support our own mental, spiritual, and emotional health. And perhaps, oh Lord, would give us an insight or an encouragement to bring a good gift to someone else. We thank you for those who are part of the panel today. We thank you for this whole Mental Health Connections Week and the partnerships in which we share. We give it all and dedicate it all to you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thanks. Good evening. First, I want to say thank you to First Presbyterian Church for hosting tonight's presentation, as well as providing the live stream capabilities for those of you watching remotely. I especially want to thank Katie Sundermeyer, youth leaders Ben and Rachel, Dr. Lauren Edwards, and everyone at the Samaritan Counseling Center who have for the work that they've put into this evening and the many small groups that will be happening throughout the week. And of course, a very special thank you to Rebecca Dickey, who will share with us her very real and raw story describing her journey with depression. A big thanks to Rebecca's husband, David, and sister Molly, who are bravely speaking out about their experience walking alongside her. Rebecca serves on the Will for Hope board, so we are especially grateful for her and her commitment to this work. And Molly attended Wofford with my brother Will, so there is a neat connection there. So thank you.
Yes.
Sharing real, honest stories, as you'll hear tonight, helps normalize conversations around mental health. They show us that mental health challenges can impact anyone, anytime, and they should be confronted with courage and hope, not fear and shame. This is exactly what led my family to start the Will for Hope Foundation in 2019 after my twin brother Will died by suicide at the age of 38. Will spent much of his college and young adult life struggling with depression and addiction. But if you met Will or knew him, you wouldn't have known that he was suffering. He was smart, kind, funny. He had a huge heart and an endearing smile. He was a passionate musician and an accomplished tennis player. He had tons of friends from all walks of life, from his high school years off at boarding school, on into college where he played college tennis, and then in his professional life where he worked in commercial real estate. But as is the case with so many people who battle depression, Will preferred to hide it and manage it himself, which only exacerbated the struggle. Despite countless doctors, medications, and even a 3-month stay in an inpatient rehab, Will struggled hard, and his family struggled with him. At the time of Will's death, he had been on a good path with no real setbacks or depressive episodes for almost 3 years. He was working, attending AA meetings, playing tennis again, and recently engaged. It appeared that Will was in a really good place to all of those around him. But as we look back, we can see that he was doing a really good job of hiding his pain. About a year after Will died, we realized as a family that we had a decision to make. We could continue to turn inward and ask the unanswerable questions of why, what happened, what did we miss, or we could find a way to turn outward, to celebrate all that was good about Will and to try and turn the tragedy of losing him into hope for others. And this brings me back to Will for Hope. The primary mission of Will for Hope is to support programs that not only bring awareness to mental health, but programs that help educate and break the stigma around mental illness and offer ways for people struggling and their loved ones to seek help and connect with others. Since Will for Hope began in 2019, we've raised over $150,000. Most of this has been from our 2 main fundraisers, Will's Rally for Hope, a tennis round robin held in the summers of 2019 and 2022. But much of it has come from personal contributions and other fundraising efforts. With these funds, we've been able to hold 3 Mental Health Connections Weeks here in Atlanta, as well as several events with mental health speakers and advocates in both Myrtle Beach and Columbia, South Carolina. Additionally, we provide funds to the Will Hudson Scholarship Program, a need-based scholarship to Any Length Recovery, a treatment facility, an inpatient treatment facility based in South Carolina. I highlight these accomplishments first and foremost to say thank you. Thanks to each of you who have contributed and continue to support the Will for Hope Foundation, but more importantly, so you can see the tangible work that we are doing, work that supports our mission of providing hope and healing for all of those impacted by mental illness. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca, who's going to walk us through her journey.
Thank you, Kate. I think I have.
Oh, you have the mic, that's right. Okay.
Okay.
You get to keep that.
Thank you, Kate and Katie, for having us here tonight. I know that there is a lot that goes into events like this, from the audio to the prep meetings that we've had before. So thank you both for you too. And I just want to take a minute to thank Molly and David too. They have walked this journey with me, and I'm grateful for both of them and the way they contributed and helped me fight this battle. But there are also other people here that I would like to thank too. My parents, who are sitting on the front row, my niece Sally, Dr. Arnold is my psychiatrist, Dr. G is the doctor that administers ketamine for me, Dr. Menenberg was the original internist I went to, Sarah Collins, and Allie Nicholas. So I have a team, and it takes a team, and there will be lots of key takeaways that we want you guys to walk away with. But I just wanted to thank everybody for being here and for listening. And for those of you online, I really appreciate you being here too. This is our first rodeo in sharing this story publicly, so bear with us. It's still very raw and real, because if you don't know, and some of you do if you suffer, but depression doesn't really go away. So it's an ongoing battle for sure. So personally, my story, my story with depression started about 5 years ago. But if I'm super honest and truthful, I had these really heavy, sad feelings of sadness even prior to 2018. I vividly remember driving from our house in LaGrange, Georgia, to Presbyterian College, where I went, on a Sunday afternoon, and I remember maybe it was homesickness, maybe it was I just didn't want to leave home, but I vividly remember this heavy, heavy feeling that would come over me, and oftentimes I would cry all the way from LaGrange to Clinton, South Carolina. I also, so in March of 2018, there were several other instances leading up to that, and I just ignored them. I thought, whatever, like everybody feels sad every once in a while, and I never really stopped to think, okay, what is that? So I graduated from school, and David and I got married, and we had our children. We have a 13-year-old Thomas, and then we have an 11-year-old Caroline. And after Caroline was born, she had some pretty severe medical issues and was in the NICU. And I'm pretty convinced I had postpartum depression, and I didn't name it that. I didn't go seek help. I just thought, well, I'm going to power through, because what else am I supposed to do? I've got a 2-year-old, a newborn, I'm working, David's working. So I really seemingly had it all together. I was the buckhead mom of 2 who got up, and I worked for a global consulting firm. And at the time in 2018, I had been there 16 years. So it's really all I ever knew. And if any of you are familiar with consulting firms, they are very, very up or out driven. It is definitely kind of a intense work environment. They say for every year that you work in consulting, it's really like working 3 years in an industry job. So you guys can do the math, 17 times 3, and I'm retired now, and that makes me feel better. So I volunteered at my kids' school. I was the PTA treasurer. I went to all their sporting events. I went to work every day. But what nobody knew, and what I knew deep in my heart, is that I was slowly dying on the inside. But I kept working. I thought, I just have to keep going. Like, there's nothing to do. Nobody knows what this is. I don't even know what this is. Like, David and I literally would stand in our kitchen, and I would cry, and he would hug me, and we would think, God, what is this? Like, what is this? And why us? And so we really struggled at the time. He had a pretty intense job, so he was, very heads down and focused on that. We had young children. I had this, pretty intense job, and it just really, all I did was work. So, like Kate talked about, Will had addictions. Fortunately, I did not turn to alcohol or drugs or other things, but I did work. It was my addiction. It was really my escape, because I knew every morning I could get up, and I did get up. That's the other thing, is most people think about depression as you're in the bed and you're crying and you just can't function, but that wasn't me. I was one of the highly functioning ones until I wasn't. So in March of 2018, insert my sister, she's obviously been here all along, but we're very close in multiple ways. She's 15 months older than me, and she's my neighbor. And so she had shared a little bit with me about how she was kind of struggling with anxiety. She has 4 children, and God bless anybody that has more than 2, much less 4. But she had shared with me that, I literally took all of my children to see Dr. Menenberg. I had to get some medicine. I was just super anxious all the time. And so I had that kind of in the back of my mind. And for those of you that don't know Molly, I would describe her as a force. So this one right here, there is nothing she can't do. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, I really think I need to say something, and I don't know what to say. And to admit that I'm having these feelings was really, really hard, because on the outside, it seemed like everything was fine. And so I remember telling her, I'm struggling. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do about it. And, a force shifts into, okay, well, I think you need to go see Dr. Menenberg, who is our internist. And of course, I don't like talking on the phone at all, but the thought at that point in my life of actually picking up the telephone and calling someone and saying, I cry all the time, I think I'm depressed, I'm really sad, like that all felt very daunting. But I did it, and I remember going into that office and literally sitting there, and I could hardly even talk, and they were very sweet, and I got some medicine, and I walked out with a piece of paper, and I thought, okay, I can do this. But I was super, super hesitant about taking medicine. For years, I would see commercials about depression medication, and I would think, that is me. Like, that is me. The one where the girl's really sad, but she brings the thing over her face and it's a smiley face. I was like, that is me. But I would very quickly just shut it down. I have a very strong faith, and I thought, God and I are going to do this. We are going to do this. I'm not taking medicine. I'm just not. What I didn't realize is it was God nudging me to take the medicine, to take the medicine. And so when I walked out of the doctor's office and I had the prescription, I thought, okay, this is step 1. After that, I then went to see her psychiatrist, Dr. Arnold, and she also put me on some medication. And I vividly remember taking that medication, and literally 30 minutes later, I was like, I was cured. I was like, this is it. This is it. This has made me feel better. This chapter in my life is closed. I'm cured. I'm over it. I'm done, and let's go to work. But what I didn't realize is that medication, after a few months, stopped working. And so I got a higher dose of that medication, and it stopped working a few months later. And then a few months after that, I was on the highest dose, and it was like, okay, this is not working for you anymore. So this was spring, early summer of 2019, and we tried a different medication. And that didn't work after several weeks. And then we tried a different medication, and that didn't work. And then we tried a third medication, or really the fourth, I guess you could say, or fifth. I've lost count, honestly. But there was a slow and steady downcline between, I would say, June of 2019 to October 2019. And on October 29th of 2019, I was at work, and I had a conversation with one of our HR partners, and I literally broke. I think she asked me how I was or something, and there was something in me that I literally sat down in the fetal position on the floor at work, and I was just sobbing. And I shared everything with her, the year-long, really year-and-a-half-long battle that I had had, and nothing was working. And she was like, go home. Close your laptop and go home. It is time for you to leave all of this stuff here and go take care of yourself. And she gave me 30 minutes to get with a family member. And I remember calling my parents. So at 41, I called my parents to come and get me. They came to my house, and I had to get with them and then call her. And so from that point, there was a couple of days after that where I had another conversation with Molly, and I said, I really think this world would be a better place without me and all of this sadness. And at that point, she literally shifted into overdrive. And because she had seen Dr. Arnold, they had been in, conversations about me trying to figure out, okay, what are the next steps? So if this doesn't work, what's the next step? And so she told me over the phone, you have two choices. One, we can go to the emergency room right now, or two, you can go get these ketamine treatments at Dr. G's office. And she was like, you decide, because we're doing one of those two things today. And I said, okay. So I'm going to pause right there and let David chime in with his 2 cents.
Yes. So, all right, got the mic going. As Rebecca shared, she had obviously had all these feelings. Yes, you did wonderful. We love you. She had all these feelings and had been experiencing all these feelings for years, really. So before the 2018, 2019 period, and we're going to talk more about that, like in some of the action steps we started taking. But as from the perspective of someone married to her as her loved one, I can honestly say I had almost zero awareness of how she was really feeling. Looking back in hindsight, there were a few things that in now it makes sense, right? I remember a time when our children were young. Our son was about 2.5, and our daughter had been born recently, and we went on a trip with my parents to a lake. We were swimming, and I think we were on a pontoon boat going like literally 2 miles an hour. Everyone had life jackets on, and she was just taken aback with anxiety and so worried about the children and them drowning. And I just remember being really confused. Why are you what's going on? And we talked it out, and I kind of took it from the standpoint of, what did I do wrong? I'm sure the dumb husband did. Did I do something wrong? Did I not put a life jacket on the right way? And we worked it out, got through it, and kept it on. And then as the years went on, there would be these episodes of, with her job, unhappiness, tears. We would stand in the kitchen. We would sit on the couch. We would talk about, what's going on? You're unhappy. And, there would be tears and crying. And I tended to come at it from well, let me solve this problem. Let me help you solve this. Let me, what can we do, right? Is it, okay, you're unhappy at work. Well, I've changed jobs before, and I've gone on interviews and changed jobs, and let's get a new job. Or you say it's the role. Well, what about this role? You're interviewing or talking to people internally about a different role. Or then it would be your upper boss. So, okay, this guy stinks, right? It's, everybody has bad bosses, and we can get through this, right? We can get that. We can do this. It's good. And the tears would continue to come. And so I think that the main reason I wanted to be up here is because I feel like I'm the average Joe. And yes, I just had no idea of what mental illness was all about. And a lot of it, I think, comes from how you're raised. And I was very much raised to be a go get it, right? Do your best. It's great. You can do this, right? plow through it and you're going to be okay. And, you know, it's don't let life get you down. And so that worked great for me. And I want to be real clear, like for my parents that are listening, like my parents are the best. And, you know, they did a wonderful job with me. And, but I don't think I was ready for, you know, it worked great for me, and I made great grades and was able to, you know, go to college and, you know, work successfully, and it was fine. But, you know, I don't think I was ready for when my loved one couldn't do that and needed a break. So, again, that point I really wanted to make was even when in 2018 and 2019, when you guys started talking about, hey, we want to go see Dr. Arnold and this psychiatrist, we want to talk about medicine, I was not really comfortable with that. That was tough for me. It was, and you know, it was messy. I didn't know a lot about it, and I didn't want to ask questions. I didn't want to talk about it in the open. And you know, you're talking about going to this doctor and taking these drugs? What does that mean? You know, what are these drugs? And that's what I think has to change in our society. Like, we've got to get okay at bringing this into the open and talking about it and not being ashamed of who knows or what people will say. Yeah, I'm on Lexapro or I'm seeing such and such, and that's okay. Seek that help, get that medicine, talk about it. And as from the standpoint of, you know, your loved ones, just helping them understand, speak out, right? It's okay to talk about how you're feeling, what's going on. In hindsight, I think that perhaps if I had, you know, been a little more self-aware through some techniques that I do now, like journaling or having dedicated quiet time, you know, every morning on a regular basis, if I had been more disciplined with that, I think maybe I would have been a little more in tune and been able to step back and see a bigger picture. Because at the time, you know, even when we started getting into the active steps, I was still very ignorant and just very kind of, it's hard to explain, but just the word depression never crossed my mind, y'all. I never thought about the word, even when she talked about going to see Dr. Arnold, it never crossed my mind like, oh, she might have depression. I can't explain it. It's so weird, but all I can say is that really be just super vigilant about tuning in to what your loved ones are going through. And I deputize this crowd, right? Many of you are probably here as you already experienced this, or you have a loved one that does. And if you are, great. I deputize you. Let's go out and let's talk about it more. If you're not, if you're still like me and kind of not educated about it, use this time to get educated and learn as much as you can, because it is of super, super importance. I'm going to turn it to Molly, who's going to talk more about taking active steps.
Actually, we'll stop for a couple of seconds. As you know, I think Kate's words earlier. This is a really real and raw conversation, and so this is an opportunity for you all to ask questions. And so, if there's anything that Rebecca has talked about, that David's talked about, that you feel curious about, want to know a little more about some component of their experience, we're just going to take a few minutes and have you guys ask questions. And so, you know, as much as they have been vulnerable and bold, I would encourage you all to do the same with your questions, because if you are wondering about something, chances are somebody else is too. And so we'll take a couple of minutes, and if you guys have a question, stand up or just shout it out so they can fill in the story all the way for whatever it is that's left. I know somebody has a question.
We scared
Come
them.
on.
Yes.
So I guess with that topic of depression and not being able to talk about it, how did y'all start talking about it?
So the question was, for anybody who couldn't hear, is how did you guys first start talking about depression, since there was such a barrier to that?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a great question. I really started talking about the way I felt, like the heavy heavy sadness. I'm not talking about sadness that like you and your boyfriend broke up sadness. I'm talking about, I call it the sad monster, and he jumps on my back, and sometimes he has his hands around my throat. I'm talking like heavy, debilitating sadness. I think talking about, because I didn't know what it was at first. It didn't have a name, and I'm very type A, like I need a spreadsheet with names and form, you know, like, and this was so nebulous to me. So I would say talk about your feelings. If it's doesn't have a name yet, like talk about you feel anxious, or talk about you feel sad, or talk about you feel in a fog. You know, brain fog was really one of the symptoms that, I mean, I literally felt like a walking zombie. So talking more about the feelings.
David, how do you wade into the conversation?
Well, I don't know if your question was ideally how do we talk about it, or how did we actually talk about it, because we didn't. It was not until the stories that Molly's going to tell that I was like, okay, like my wife has depression. This is the most serious thing we've ever been through.
Did you have a question, Dan? Back in their children, our Thomas and Caroline, with the Ritter Arms, did they help you with complication on dealing with depression?
Now you're gonna make me cry.
Rebecca, you want to restate this?
Yes, so my dad in the front row asked, I have Thomas who's 13 and Caroline who is 11 now. Of course they were younger. Take those years and subtract 5 years. He asked if they were helpful in the situation or if they were more of a complication. And I have to say that they are the reason I'm here. You know, like as bad as it was and as sad and awful as I felt, and as much as I thought, let's just end all of this because that would be better, I thought, I cannot leave those children. I can't. And we talk very openly at home about it, but I would absolutely say that they're the reason, a big reason that I'm here.
I've always felt women of this generation had just the hardest challenge because they're working more outside the home and then still bear the brunt of a lot of the child rearing. I mean, like it or not, I mean, whether it's making doctor's appointments or whatever. And then I always was kind of aware of that, but I thought, boy, aren't I lucky. My wife can do it all. She's got it figured out. She's perfect, and she is perfect. And I was totally blind to what she was really going through. Yeah.
How did you differentiate from the environmental factors with the job or the stress of the job of the boss and the deeper sad monster? How did you differentiate from those two?
We didn't for a very long time. We only thought it was the job. Literally, if she could just ditch this job, it's all going to be okay. I mean, it's all we ever talked about was how awful the job was. This narcissistic boss, this terrible role, this, that, the other. The job took the fall.
Yeah, and I do think I literally had to be brought to my knees, and I have to fully believe it was the good Lord above and his divine intervention saying, I have given you signs that you need to quit, and you have done nothing with those, so I'm going to close the door for you, and I'm literally going to bring you to your knees, and you have no other choice. So, and she's right, I didn't for the longest time. I mean, I was so driven. I was so tied to the golden handcuffs. The insurance was phenomenal. I literally thought that we would have to pack up and move to some really small town in Georgia in order to afford to live if I quit my job. Like, the money was a huge, huge part of why I didn't quit until I had no choice. So again, she's right. The job really took a lot of the fall.
And then when you did quit and it was still there, you realized it was something.
Well, I think I knew all along, like, this is the job, but it's also like much bigger than the job. But I think, you know, my HR friend gave me permission to go. Like, I think at that point I knew what it was, and I had been taking medication, and I knew it was much bigger than me leaving this consulting firm and going to that job. But I'm stubborn, and it took a little bit of time for sure.
But I think we all, for a long time, hoped that since she's quit the job, it's going to get better. And it didn't. It really didn't. It wasn't until, you know, really the ketamine was and we're going to get to all that. But, you know, I think you came home and it was like, you were upset and you were like, I've quit the job. And we were all like, okay, well, here we go. And then it didn't. It just didn't. I don't know if y'all remember it differently, but that's what y'all all thought. And I
was pretty sure once October 29th happened that you were never going back to that type, that you couldn't.
And I haven't.
And then at that point that it was a lot more serious than that.
So I think, you want me to start? So I'm her sister, I'm Molly. I am a nurse practitioner, so I do have a little bit of medical background. My husband's a physician. We have 4 kids, and Sally's here, she's in the front. First, I want everyone here to go home with something concrete. I want you guys to know how you can help if you know of someone that's struggling with, you know, a hard time, a mental illness, whatever it is. And if you are the one struggling, I want you to realize that I'm going to give you some tools, I'm going to give you some help, I'm going to give you some concrete things to sort of go home with. But this was a privilege. I am a different person because of all that we've seen, the people that I've talked to, those of you who open up to me and tell me about your struggles or your family or your mother or your husband or your children. This world is full of people who want to help. Myself is just one example of them. If we can be more vulnerable with each other and talk to each other and tell our stories, the whole thing will be so much easier because each one of you in this room knows something that can help someone. And so truly, my heart and my mind, I have so much more empathy. Like it's rampant and it's very serious. And as David said, it's really messy, but it is the human connection that we have that we just don't talk about a lot. So, you know, talking, asking other people, being vulnerable with other people, try to find one person. It doesn't have to be your sister or your brother or your mother or sometimes people are really comfortable with perfect strangers. I have a business in which I see patients all day long and I'm floored by what people tell me. And I think it's because it's quiet, it's a safe space, and it's the first time they just let it all out. And like, I give out my psychiatrist card more than I do anybody else. It's be open, try to find the words, try to put, whether you know what it is or not. My anxiety I never knew that was what it was, but you know, over the years I've kind of figured out that's what it is. But that's worry. I come from a long line of worriers. That is anxiety. My great aunt used to say, should we worry? And so, you know, everybody describes it differently, you know, so try to use some words, try to let people in a little bit. I've taken Lexapro for 10 years. It's a miracle. I think it should be in the water, you know, so. But I do realize that it's not super comfortable for people. So, but number one, try to find someone, a church member, a family member, a coworker. You know, everybody kind of connects. Just try to find someone. And then, what does this even say? Okay, yes. Use the right words too. If you are someone who has a person who you know struggles, and they come to you and they tell you whatever it is. Rebecca said, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And I mean, when I say crying, I mean like every time I talked to her, she was just sobbing. I would call and check on her and she was sobbing. She would call me and she was sobbing. Like the sadness and the just unable to really talk at all was very real. You need to say, does this mean you're going to commit suicide? Does this mean that you have thoughts of hurting yourself? And it is a very hard word to say. I probably haven't said it out loud, but a few times. But you need to ask, because you'd be surprised at the people that would say, yeah, maybe. So I think it's important to ask very specific questions. Any of your doctors, if you've ever been to even the ER or even your internist, they're like, do you have guns in the house? Do you have, this and that and the other? Well, it's because you'd be surprised at the people that say, yeah, and yeah, I do have a plan. So, ask specific questions, talk about what that means. When she called me, she started, we saw Dr. Arnold. She put her on an SSRI, which is a Lexapro. Then they started her on the Vyvanse, which is a stimulant. And if y'all take that for ADD or whatever, it's a big dopamine release, and that's your feel-good hormone. And you feel on cloud 9 if you need it. Now, I don't need it, and it makes me feel horrible. But for her, that was the instant gratification. But the more you take, the more you need. And so that is where we ended up a year and a half later, and it wasn't working anymore. So my point in all of that is when she came to me at the end of the Vyvanse, road, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And so we said we're going to the ER, and you said, I really don't want my children to think that I've had to go to the ER over this. And so we ended up at Dr. G's office, who is a psychiatrist out of Emory, trained at Emory, and did all his studies on ketamine at Emory. Ketamine, I'm not going to try to pretend I know how it works, but it is very effective in medication-resistant depression. And a lot of times, if you were to go to the ER, they will give you that medicine, and you will feel better within, 24 hours, really. She's a different person when she takes it. I can feel it through her texts. It's shocking. It's just, I'm getting emojis, and I got yes, no, like the day before. The energy is totally different. And I mean, she can talk more about that. We're going to get to that. But anyway, when your sister says she's going to commit suicide, we shift into action. A lot of people that are watching this that know me really well, David said I'm a dog with a bone. And I did. We went into doing. I'm a big, big, big doer. I'm not going to sit around and talk about it so much, but I called Dr. Menenberg, called Dr. Arnold. We had already talked about sort of what the next step was. Sent her immediately to Dr. G, who is the ketamine guy, and then I would call them again. When is your next appointment? Are you going? There was a lot of doing. It's endless. I never left her side. I think being physically present with someone when they're in crisis like that is, to me, that was the only way I knew for sure we were going to be okay, is if she was right there with me. I was trying to set up a new office, and she had a new job. She would just sit. I mean, literally sit. I will say brain fog. I mean, it was scary. It was shocking how little she was really able to do. And we would go to IKEA, and we would just pull her along with us, and she would go to the doctor, and then the ketamine, once you do ketamine a lot at first, and then you kind of taper down, and then ultimately some people are able to not take it anymore, but she continues to take it. But I would say, as a caregiver, if you know someone that struggles, laying eyes on them regularly is super important. Whether you are making excuses to drop by the house, or you're making excuses to go see them at work.
You should tell the story about when you came up to my house and knocked on the door.
Oh, yes. So around October 29th, crisis mode, serious business. David, of course, was out of town. which is typical, not for David, but just that the crisis has hit the fan and the husband's gone. I would get up every morning at 5:30 and walk up the hill and knock on the door every single morning. Are we up? Are we up? I don't care if we're dressed. I don't care if we're hardly even out of the bed, but are we up? And it was messy. I didn't know what I was doing. No one tells you what to do, but I do think, and she had the same outfit on every day. That is, to me, a big sign, too, that things are not good. This gray jacket and this gray hat. And it's so, looking back, it's a wonder we didn't.
It is the outfit of depression.
It was awful. They should do a commercial about it. But it was, we didn't really think about it at the time. It was cold. It was winter. We were all trying to get our vitamin D, be outside, not sit in the dark house. But I think, seeing them, being physically present with them, helping them get through the day, making sure their doctor's appointments are made, making sure they're sleeping. Oh my God, that's a huge part. Dr. Arnold would help us with that. Because even though you think of them laying in the bed, they don't often sleep very well, which just sort of perpetuates the problem. Like I said, just laying eyes on them every single day. They're too sick to do it they're by themselves. You have to be the one to sort of do it for them, literally. I'd say for months, we kind of did it for you. And y'all ask about the children. We did for the children. We took them to all their sporting events. We made sure everything was done. There wasn't a whole lot of talk at first about it with the kids because we didn't even know what to say, much less how to explain it to them. But, and then the one thing that I thought was really important, because people ask me and I'm trying to, think about what y'all's questions might be, have a plan for when the person calls you and says, this is we're at a crossroads here. Ketamine, for sure, for us, was a big one. If you're the person, who is your person you can call? She called me, but is it your spouse? Is it your parent? Is it your coworker, your church member? Again, helpers are everywhere, so don't think that someone's not going to be there to there's inpatient clinics. There is a huge need for more inpatient clinics, but someone asked me what I did for myself. Nothing. I hate to say it, but there's no time for you, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. We rolled right into COVID after that. It was hard. It was hard for years. You'd try to get some exercise, and you'd pour yourself a drink, and you just get through it every single day. I do see Dr. Arnold. I do think she's wonderful. But I agree with David. If we can go home, A, know who your person is. B, the people need to know what to ask. 3, be with them as much as you can. Talk to their friends and ask them to be with them. Just make sure someone's keeping an eye on them. And then go out there and ask. When you ask people how they are, really listen to them. She used to always say she's fine. Mama, remember that? And
to this day, my mom is like, don't you tell me you're fine.
Truly, fine was the word, and it was just a joke, honestly. I want you to talk a little bit about the ketamine. I'm sorry.
Do you want to see if there are any other questions?
Let's take some time for a few more questions. In particular, if you all have questions from the perspective of David and Molly as caregivers, what they experienced, what they saw, ask those. Yeah.
Clearly, Rebecca was a willing participant.
Mm-hmm.
What if we have someone in our lives, but they're not at that point, but they're grown-ups, can't make someone go get cut. Half the time you can't even talk to your doctor.
So,
They don't want you to talk to your doctor.
so the question is, what are the strategies when someone doesn't necessarily want to go and get help? They don't want to follow.
So
I think I need to answer this.
Go ahead.
So, Ketamine is the only thing that works for her. But even as recent as just a few weeks ago, she's decided maybe that we're going to not take our ketamine anymore, and that we're going to push it out a little bit. And you cannot make someone get help. And you hope that they come. You continue to talk. We all have it on our calendar when she got it last. It's hard. She won't quit quitting, you know. I feel you do take a step back a little bit. I mean, my life has been dedicated to this for several years now, you know, but I think it's very hard. What do you tell people?
I would say to get your own support. That's such a painful and helpless space to be in, that you need your own support in that space. And so if you can't get help for that person, to get help for yourself. And I do think you guys have had this amazing and beautiful illustration of what it's like to have someone who can just be. You know, David didn't know what to do, and so he was able to just be there in that space and be the person sitting on the sofa just, you know, holding Rebecca. And Molly was able to be the person who was doing. And so if you can't always do, there's a lot of value in being, I think, at the same time.
And I would say, too, don't give up on them.
Mhm.
Don't give up. Because there were so many years in there that I was fine. If they had told me, hey, we think you have a problem, I would have been like, are you crazy? I got to go to my client meeting. I'm too busy. Like, I'm too important to have a mental illness. That's the other thing is mental illnesses, they don't discriminate. They don't care that you have a big job. They don't care that you're a mother. They don't care. But I would say don't give up on them, because maybe it's not bad enough yet for them. Maybe they haven't been brought to their knees, and maybe they won't, maybe they will, but don't give up on them. Continue to check in, continue to ask, continue to encourage, and say you can feel better. She would always say to me, all of this crying is not normal. It's just not normal. And I would be like, oh, well, I just thought that God made me a crier. But don't give up on them. I think that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to all of you for sharing your story. Rebecca, I'm curious, at any point in this journey, were you able to get connected to counseling, individual or group counseling?
Yes. So Dr. Arnold is a unique psychiatrist in that she focuses on the medicine and the talk therapy part, and she prides herself in that, and I also think that she's phenomenal at both. I also did see a therapist, Sarah Collins, and I have also recently, within the past 6 months, started brain spotting and EMDR. So when I say I have a big toolkit and I have a big team, we have literally tackled it from all different angles.
She's worked extremely hard and completely changed her life and her lifestyle. Diet, exercise, mental, the different doctors and those techniques, but I would use that as a positive for those that aren't on the other side yet. That there is hope, and don't give up on your loved ones. Don't give up if you are in a dark place right now. If you're online and you're scared, you were nervous to come here, there is all kinds of hope and joy possible. God wants us to live an abundant life, and she's living proof. It's so inspiring what she's been able to do. I could go on for days. I could go on for another hours about that, but the short story is God he's not through with us. He's not through with us yet, and he's got a journey and a plan for us. He loves us.
So, Rebecca, I don't know, we've got about 2 more minutes, and so we're gonna wrap up because I know we've got to close out the live stream as well. We will all stick around up here, and I know one of the important things for these guys is to make sure that there are no questions left unanswered. And so if you have any questions that are remaining, we want you to come. You're welcome to ask me from a clinical perspective as a psychologist, or these guys about their more personal experiences, but we'll stick around. So if you still have questions that we didn't get to, come and find us afterwards.
Is that a good last We're
Yes.
gonna, we're
For
gonna
Dad.
pause.
For Dad.
Because I got a whole section of youth here that gotta
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a last word that you want to say, or just yes, come with any other questions?
You know, I would just say you can live a life, a joyful life full of hope. There were many, many, many days and months and years where I thought, it's just not possible. You know, it's just not possible, but it is. So keep going, keep trying. Find the dog on the bone. If it isn't your sister, if it's your friend, there are people out there that want to help you. They know what you are suffering from, and you just got to find them, and you just have to keep going.
Thank you. So on the back table, if you want to continue some conversations Monday through Thursday, some of us will be back there, and please sign up for a small group. And I think, thank you, Dr. Edwards and Rebecca and family for being here. So if you have further questions, please come here, and let's say thank you. Thank you very much.